You can put it in
The expansion of the empire was ensured by the ruthless efficiency of their army.
See how the brow ridge forces the blade away from my face? And the neck guard protects the back of the neck.
So they were forever perfecting their armory for the times and the style of weapon of the opponent, right?
And that's why the Romans were so successful, because they learned from the people they were fighting, took what was best, adapted it, and then made it better.
Those clever Romans, eh? Ah, I hate it when that happens.
It's a short, thrusting sword, twist, pull it out.
Nasty.
It'll disable you, and you will die. You will die at some point straight after, through septicemia, gangrene, something like that. No antibiotics, no medicine, nothing to save you.
Charming.
Well, the Romans would just want to get rid of their enemies, and that's a surgical way.
Right.
You imagine now, $5,500, human chainsaw advancing down the hill towards you. Each man surgically thrusting, killing, killing, killing. And this is where the Romans are using psychology as well as military technology. This armor is worth, in terms of property, something like a small village. So say $750,000, and every single Roman soldier is equipped like this. Whereas in the British culture, the noble might have this amount of armor, but the rest are fighting. Even one of the sources is fighting with sharpened sticks, not even spears. So say 5,500 armored men marching over that hill is going to...
Gleaming in the sun.
Absolutely, polished to shine. And then with lots of rattling noise, it's going to psych you out. You're not going to want to fight.
It was a clash of two ancient cultures. The Britons had been developing their island culture for 10,000 years. The Romans, on the other hand, spread their culture by conquering much of the known world. And they did it with amazing efficiency. Like this water wheel, rebuilt at the Museum of London, the Romans brought undeniable technological progress. With this one machine, a handful of slaves could provide enough water for hundreds of Roman households every day.
There is no doubt that the Romans saw themselves in Northern Europe as the flag bearers for a higher civilization. And in fact, although it's politically incorrect to say this, they were absolutely right. They came from a world that had the Parthenon, it had great architecture, it was backed up by everything that was good in Greek and indeed Roman law and philosophy. And there is no doubt that the cultures they came in contact with in Northern Europe were politically and intellectually not quite so advanced.
Julie, where do we get the idea that early Britons painted themselves blue?
Caesar tells us in his Gallic Wars, when he visited Britain in 55, 54 BC, he remarks that the people of southeastern Britain painted themselves blue with woad. Well, it comes from the woad plant, and how to make the blue is you take the woad leaves and you boil them in boiling water, and then you need to add ammonia, which perhaps would have been in the form of urine in the Iron Age. And then as you boil all these chopped leaves in urine and water, the blue pigment, the leaves, comes out and sinks to the bottom. And then you tip away the water and the plant matter, and then you're left with this blue pigment. Okay, I'm just going to paint it on my arm here. When I first did this recipe, I painted it on a friend of mine who is in the army, or was in the army, and he told me that the colour that was produced with beef fat and woad was the same colour as used in the British Army camouflage palette to break up the face of the soldier, but it would have had the same effect as making a person invisible at dawn and dusk, I think, if they went into battle. I mean, can you imagine how great that is to be able to go into battle invisible? I mean, no wonder the ancient Brits believed in this sort of thing.
So, Julie, how long would this remain on the body?
Well, this would wash off immediately, which is kind of useful because if you're an ancient Brit with Roman friends and you don't want to betray your native identity or something, you can just wash it off immediately before going to meet your Roman friends. Alternatively, if you were to dye the body with woad, that would stay on for several weeks. You'd have to wait till it wore off. And if you really wanted to make it stay on forever, of course, you can tattoo it. You just break off a thorn from the nearest bush, prick it into your skin, rub in the woad, and you have your tattoo. And I think that Britons who really wanted to rebel against the Romans, but in a silent way, could tattoo their designs on their body and cover it with their clothes. So when the Roman soldiers were walking past, they could perhaps roll up their sleeves and nudge, nudge, wink, wink to each other, and so the Romans wouldn't see.
So what's in this, Julie?
Well, it's woad, and the binding agent we've used in this particular example is semen.
Pardon?
It's semen.
So not only does woad make you look good, it makes you feel funky, and I can well imagine charging into war and totally freaking out those Romans. Boudica's cultural heritage was more under threat than she thought. The land on which their very existence depended was about to be taken out from under them.
They were tremendously productive. There was more land under the plough in the south of England at that time than at any point until after the end of the First World War in this country. Caesar had never seen so fecund a country.
I think amongst the Iceni there was a real sense of continuity. These people had farmed the same land for not just generations, but for centuries and centuries. And really, it had been theirs, if you like, forever.
Like native peoples all over the world, early Britons held land in common. But to the Romans, land was money. They handed out parcels of land to old centurions for their retirement. So today's Iceni village could be tomorrow's Roman retirement villa. There's one group of early Britons we've all heard of, the Druids.
The Druids are the key to who the Britons were. This was our indigenous shamanic cultural base. It had been growing for 5,000 years. It was the pinnacle of evolution, of a connection between the people and the land. They were the people who established a system of justice and maintained it. Without question, they would have a political leaning, and that political leaning would be anti-Roman, because Rome imposed other gods. Rome imposed other ways of being. Rome broke the connection between the people and the gods of the land.
The Druids were also the only force that held the disparate and often quarrelsome British tribes together. Rome knew that to conquer Britain, they had to conquer the Druids. And the man for that job was the new governor, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus.
Suetonius had been part of the Roman suppression in Mauritania. He had led his troops across the Atlas Mountains. He was the first Roman to have done that. So he was very, very good at mountain warfare. And at the time he was appointed, the west of Britain was the focus of Roman warfare. Wales, we had the mountains of Wales. They had to cross through Snowdonia to get to Anglesey, to get to the Druids. They wanted someone who the troops could trust to lead them across the mountains. And he was brutal, without question. I think he was brutal before he got here, and he was certainly brutal once he got here.
By the time of Prasutagus' death in AD 60, the Druids were holed up on the island of Anglesey off North Wales. Suetonius had specific orders to crush them. Roman historian Tacitus tells of how the Druids were attacked and slaughtered.
On the opposite shore stood the Britons. Women ran through the ranks in wild disorder, resembling the frantic rage of the Furies. The Druids were ranged in order, with hands uplifted invoking the gods. The Romans advanced their standards and rushed onto the attack with impetuous fury. The Britons perished in the flames, which they themselves had kindled.